Hello everyone, my name is Firas. I'm a second year medical student at UCF. I want to start off by thanking Dr. Tira for inviting me. I used to be a UCF student, and I used to be part of the Pure program 2 years ago. And a fourth year at UCF, his name is John, gave the same presentation 2 years ago, and I got to see him at a pediatrics conference about 2 weeks ago, which was really cool. So this is the campus in Lake Nona. I don't know if any of you have visited the campus. And we actually have an opportunity for you guys to visit it in 2 weeks, which I'm going to talk about later. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Tampa, but then I moved to Dubai with my family, and I lived there for about 15 years. And then I moved back when I was 16, went to high school in Tampa, and then came to UCF in 2010. I graduated with molecular microbiology, which I don't think they have anymore, do they? I thought, yeah, it's called bio. Yeah. So, and then I started med school in August 2014. So a little bit about my undergraduate experience. So some of the programs that we have here, I did pilot with Dr. Borgon, which was really cool. That basically gave me the opportunity to work with students, work on my public speaking skills, which was really cool. And then I did Pure with Dr. Tira, which basically gave me the opportunity to find a research mentor. I worked with Dr. Siddiqui through the Pure program, which is he's a researcher at the Burnett School, which is in Lake Nona. And he basically works on VLDLs, very low density lipoproteins. And then I was also active with PPMS. I don't know if any of you here are PPMS members. Oh, cool. And I also volunteered at Florida Hospital East for about 1 year. And this is my poster and presentation from about a year and a half ago in the SURE conference with Pure, which is the final step before you finish the program. So the medical school format. So medical school is basically 4 years after you get accepted. And it's basically divided to 2 years and then 2 years. So the first 2 years is basically very similar to undergrad. You're going to classes, and that's pretty much most of your time. And then the second 2 years is when you basically do rotations. And the way it works is about every 8 to 12 weeks, you switch specialties. So let's say the first 8 to 12 weeks, you'll do general surgery, and then you'll do internal medicine, and so on and so forth. And then by fourth year, you'll have kind of an idea what you like. So you start picking the ones that you want to try again, and then you start interviewing, and then by the end of fourth year, hopefully you'll get a residency spot, and then you'll go to residency. So this is the curriculum format for all 4 years. It looks like it's a little bit messy. I'll try to break it down, but don't worry about it if it doesn't make sense. So basically, this is the first year, second year, third year, and then fourth year. So for the first year, we basically have 2 courses here, which you do throughout the year, which are the research course and then the clinical course. But then we also have a classroom course, which I'm going to talk about later. The second year pretty much has the same format, and then third and fourth year is basically rotations. It's going to make a little bit more sense once I get into the details. So we basically have this thing that's called an integrated curriculum, and basically what it means, so we don't have separate classes. We have modules, and every module has a bunch of classes that are combined. So for example, we don't have an anatomy course and a physiology course. We have a module that combines all these different courses. So right now, the course that I'm in, and I'm actually taking an exam in about 3 days, it's cardiology and pulmonary. And we're pretty much covering every single aspect of those 2 different systems. So my exam is going to be covering microbiology, immunology, pathology, pathophysiology, physiology, anatomy, nutrition, and pharmacology. So pretty much every system in the system. And so we basically have large lectures, and then we have small group sessions for cases and stuff like that. And then we have self-directed learning modules, which are basically videos that they make for us. And then, like I said, we have multiple classes combined into one module. And then we also have a course that's called Practice of Medicine. And the Practice of Medicine course is basically the course where we basically get some experience in interviewing and then doing physical exams. so that by the time we're third years, it's not like the first time we've ever done an interview or a physical exam. So what they pretty much try to do is have some coordination between the courses that we're learning and at the same time the practice of medicine course. So right now, since I'm doing cardiopulmonary, we were basically asked to do an interview on a patient that had basically symptoms of like heart failure, symptoms of asthma, COPD, and then you have to do a focused physical exam that basically covers those specific systems. And then when you go to the next module, which is for us is going to be endocrine, you're going to have to do a focused exam on endocrine. So like I said, we have the main module, which changes names like every 6 to 8 weeks. So now I'm doing cardiopulmonary. Next week I'm going to be doing endocrine reproductive for the next like 8 weeks. And then I'm going to do GI renal. So at every point of time, we basically have one class. But that class has multiple classes in it. So in first year, there's technically only 4 classes, but you're probably covering like 21 courses in those 4 classes. And some modules might be 6 weeks, some modules might be 12 weeks, and it just really depends on how much content they have in them. So a little bit about the format. So when you're applying to med school, you're going to hear different things being said about like how USF teaches versus how UCF teaches, how like different schools teach. So in UCF, just to simplify it and break it down, this is how they teach. They basically teach you how the body functions in year 1, and then in the second year, we like to say they teach you how the body breaks down. So in first year, I basically learned anatomy, physiology, histology. Everything we pretty much studied looked normal. So we basically did anatomy. We did a full cadaver dissection. We got to see the different organs, studied everything that looked normal. And then by the end of first year, we slowly started transitioning to basically learning the pathologies and how everything starts messing up. And then in second year, that's when you start doing systems. So even though like I'm doing cardiopulmonary right now, I actually covered cardiac and pulmonary anatomy and physiology last year when I did this module, but it wasn't focused on pathology. It was more focused about how the heart actually functions. So like last year, it was more about the things that you guys might have covered in your physiology class. Whereas this year, we're like listening to murmurs, what a heart attack would be caused by, and like different diseases like that. And then this is the practice of medicine module that I talked about. And basically, this module seems like it's tough at first, but then it gets easier and harder as you go along. It gets easier in the sense that you're more experienced, but they ask you to do more difficult tasks. So at first, they're only going to ask you to do like a short interview, and then the interviews start getting longer. They start getting more awkward. You start like taking sexual history and drug history and like things like that, and then you start doing physical exams, and then they basically start reducing the time. And by your second year, you basically have no idea what you're doing because you walk in and you basically have to figure out which physical exam you need to do. Because they're not, like now, I know I'm doing the cardiopulmonary system, so it's going to be a cardiopulmonary focused exam. By the end of the year, I don't know which system they're going to want me to basically do the exam on. And this is basically a picture of one of the students working with an SP. So for the first 2 years in this course, we basically have standardized patients, which are basically actors or actresses. And they basically assist us in doing the interviews and the physical exams. And what's really cool about that is they're very trained, and they can make it difficult but easy at the same time. So when you're doing an interview, they basically teach you how to ask open-ended questions. So if you ask a question like, do you smoke? They're going to tell you either yes or no. But if you ask more open-ended questions, they'll basically give you more information. And then, go ahead. No, they're general, like they're not students. They're general public, but they're basically trained, like that's their job, and they're being compensated for it. And there's basically different levels of SPs, because we basically get to do pretty much like all the different exams on them. So there's like different specialties. So there's like your basic SP, standardized patient, which basically just does like interviews and like general exams. And then there's SPs that have more training that can do even more invasive exams, like rectal exams and like, so on and so forth. So, like I said, you work with standardized patients. The intensity increases with time. Another thing that's really cool about the practice of medicine course is we basically get paired up with a physician from the community. So last year I got paired up with an internal medicine doctor that works at Florida Hospital. And it's funny because I basically got the same thing this year, just a different doctor. And different people get paired up in different places. I actually have a friend who got paired up to basically work at a correctional facility, which he's pretty worried about. His first session is going to be next week. So, yeah, so it's pretty cool. You basically get a lot of different experiences because, so even though I got internal medicine like back-to-back years, some people get different specialties. Like you might end up getting pediatrics, endocrine, like you never know what you're going to get. It's very random. So the last course which we have, so basically, like I said, we have the main class, which combines different classes. Then we have practice of medicine. And then this is the last course that we have. And it's basically called FIRE, Focused Inquiry Research Experience, which is basically a mandatory requirement that they have for us to do research. And they're very good about it because they basically have everything set up very nicely. So they have an Excel spreadsheet list with all the different names, including Dr. Teeter's name. And you basically can like check out every single faculty member that's associated with UCF, including physicians that are volunteer faculty. You can read about their specialties, their research projects, their contact information. And you basically have about 6 to 8 weeks from the beginning of first year to basically contact them. So even though I've been going to school now for about 8 weeks this year, the first years I don't think have still decided on their mentors. Like they still have some time. So it's not very pushy. Even though it's a like requirement, they're very easy in like making it easy to the students to have good successful projects. Yeah, go ahead. You could. And you can even continue the same project. And Lauren Farley's like that? Was she a student with you before? Oh, okay. Go ahead. No, during your second year. So this is only a requirement for the first 2 years. So I'm going to be presenting my poster sometime this March because I'm a second year. And then third year, you basically have no research requirements whatsoever. The only thing that you focus on is your rotations. And I was telling Dr. Peter how this is the time when if you're interested in basically doing research in a certain field, that's when you do that. Like I'm interested in ENT right now, but I could be interested in different things by the time I'm a third year. And that's going to be the time when I decide that I should maybe improve my research resume and basically pursue different projects. And FIRE won't be a hindrance because I'm not going to be doing it. This is just a little bit about like the medical school culture that we have. So every class has 120 students. And like our class is the class of 2018. And every student from the second year class gets paired up with a student from the first year class to be their mentor. And it happens every year. So next year they're going to be mentors for the new coming class. And there's a very supportive culture. We have different Facebook pages, like a social page, a sports page, academia page. You can see I access the sports page more than the academia page. And we also have an office that's very similar, even though it's been a year and a half. My memory's bad. What was the office that you guys have here? SARC? Yeah, so we have the SAS office. And then a little bit about the medical school culture. Like I said, we have different organizations, and one of the organizations that I actually represent is AMSA. So I'm the vice president for AMSA at UCF, and we're actually having an event. I don't know if anybody here from Pre-Med AMSA? Coffee at the Com? Yeah, so I'm actually hosting Coffee at the Com, and I'm working with your secretary, Leticia, I think. Yeah, so basically that's going to be in 2 weeks. We're basically inviting Pre-Med AMSA members to come to Lake Nona. Basically, they're going to get to see the assistant dean give a talk for about 30 minutes. And then there's going to be a large group panel. And then for anybody that feels shy, we'll also have small group panels. So once we finish the large group panel, we're going to break it down to smaller groups. And then those smaller groups would basically give tours to their basically members. And the different interest. Go ahead. I you would have to reach out to the board members in AMSA. I don't have a problem with it, but I think they basically have a budget, and they need to basically account, like in terms of like shuttle, transportation, and resources, because we have basically limited numbers of speakers, because we're going to basically be giving tours to the students. So if I have more students than med students, I'm not going to be able to give the tours. So if you can just reach out to them, I don't think they'll mind, but it's really not my decision to make. Sorry. And we have other like interest groups. So we basically have interest groups for the different specialties. So I'm also one of the board members for the ENT interest group, which is ear, nose, throat. We also have a variety of different interest groups, like students interested in academic medicine, wellness groups, a family group, because we have a lot of married people in our class. So just, different groups, just to everybody to have a nice supportive environment. And then the assistant dean, which is going to be speaking at the Coffee at the Com event, also gives us regular career advising events. So she basically comes to our class every like 6 to 8 weeks, meets with us for like an hour, gives us updates on what's new with the school, talks to us about like the difficulties that our class might be having. And it's a very open environment. And she actually has like open lunch hours every Monday if any student wants to like have lunch with her. And very supportive environment. And then every student is also assigned not only an upperclassman, but also a faculty mentor. And you basically meet with that faculty mentor at least once every year to basically check up on your progress. So some tips for success, like time management is probably the biggest one. Not trying to scare anybody. Anybody here is interested in going to med school? How many people here? It's very difficult. I'm like not going to sugarcoat it. The first thing that everybody says in first year, if I studied this hard for the MCAT, I would be in Harvard. This is what everybody says a month after med school, because you study that hard. Exam week, 15 hours a day, which is exam week for me this week. Learning to say no, taking breaks to avoid burnout. So a lot of people, like the weekends after exam, some people like even travel. Like 6, 7 of my classmates are like going out of state just to like have fun and then come back and like reset. And then just a few things if you guys like want some advice on how to get to med school. I think the biggest thing is not stuffing up your resume with a million experiences. I think what matters more is having one solid experience that counts rather than having 4 or 5 experiences that mean nothing. So don't feel like you're obligated to have a research experience, a volunteering experience, a million experiences just to make yourself look good. If you have, like, let's say you went on like 5, 6 mission trips, that looks really good. You don't need like a million different volunteering opportunities to solidify that. And definitely like good grades and a good MCAT score really matter. And then the biggest thing is basically having an application that really matches your personality. Like, don't make up an application that doesn't represent you, because you're going to get caught when you interview, and they're going to know that that's not the same person that they invited for an interview. And then they're not going to accept you, which happens a lot. And then this was just about the Coffee at the Com event. And like I said, you guys can reach out to the Pre-Med AMSA board members, and everybody's welcome to join from like our side. And like I said, there's the assistant dean, and then there's like a student panel. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Any questions? I think so. So we have like so the MCAT average for like the accepted classes is usually around like 30 or 31. But that's the average, which means a lot of people scored higher, a lot of people scored lower. Like I have some friends that got 28s, and I have some friends that got 35s and 36. So I think it's possible as long as you have a solid application. And I think that matters more. And so basically, it sounds bad, but some medical schools think, your MCAT score shows how smart you are, but your GPA shows how consistent and hardworking you are. Because your GPA is based on 4 years of work, whereas your MCAT is one test day. That's the best you got. So, and I don't think either your GPA or your MCAT correlate to good scores and good grades in med school. I know a lot of people that scored in the upper 30s. And I know a guy who scored in the upper 30s on the MCAT, hasn't gotten a single A in first year. So I have a lot of different reasons, and family reasons is one of them. So I was here before, and my younger brother also goes here. But then I also, like I said, I was in the Pure program, so I actually worked in a lab in Lake Nona. And I knew 2 students from like the 3rd year class now that used to be first years back then. And there was a symposium event by PPMS. So I had like so many chances to go visit the campus, talk to people. And they were like very friendly to me. And it just seemed like the right choice. And it's funny, I actually told somebody that UCF did such a great job during the interview to sell me on coming to UCF. But then after being a student, I feel like they did a bad job because I feel like it was better than they even presented it to be. So. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Peter. Appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it.